Yud Adar, Hataf Shil Samech Ches, Hemshech Samech Vav, page Kuf Mem Tes, Kuf Nun. Yud Adar Aleph, Rishon.
Purim Kota. Alright, so we saw the difference between the Bechinas Rotzei mitzad Riyah de Chochma and the Bechinas Shoiv, which is mitzad Riyah de Chochma. And we saw the difference was between whether it's purely in Moyach HaChochma, in the union of Moichin, the Riyah remains mitzad the Avedus HaMoyach, or whether we saw that it's Nimshach, the Riyah de Chochma is Nimshach or Murgash Balev. When we saw it comes to B'teich Halev, then the Ika Aveda is Bechinas Shoiv Davka. We saw that is mitzad the Bittul of Kabbalah Seo. We want to say that the union of Kabbalah Seo was Davka Balev. We brought to Moshe the difference between the Sar and the Sar, who's Kodev El HaMelech, but that's mitzad his appreciation and his asoga in the greatness of the Melech. The Yirod Inyan HaEved, Aziz Be'ika mitzad the Inyan HaLev, and therefore by him is the Riyas Pnei HaMelech and the Riyas Gadlus HaMelech. That causes in him even from Bittul, what is near to the Achura Be'ira Gedela. And so that the beer was that the Sar Ikra is Bechinas Moichin, the Kol Inyone Ushu Miyoyat HaMelech. And therefore he's Mekabo, the Yeke Gedulas HaMelech B'moichai, and the Tainug, and the tremendous fulfillment that he feels in the observation of the godless of the Melech is a Tainug which mitzad the Inyan HaMoyach Davke, mitzad the Inyan HaChochma. And therefore he's Nidbak in the greatness of the Melech. But we saw that the Eved, as he's in his Kabbalah Seo, does be Iker mitzad the Inyan of the Lev. And therefore he reacts and he's Mekabo, the godless HaMelech, in a way that it's poil in him shiflos. On the contrary, he becomes completely botel and efes be'ene atzmei becomes completely negated in his own eyes, and therefore he's in a state of absolute retreat from the godless HaMelech, being unable almost to stand in a union from Kiro. That's the Moshe that we saw in the previous class. We Yedua, the Chochma, we finished up by saying that the union from Chochma, who bechinas Bittul the Eved, Kamoy Moshe Avdi, who biyesa Davke Kasher bechinas Ariyah the Chochma Bo El Alev, who bechinas Oimek Halev, Shalamayla Yesa Me Oineg HaChochma. We saw that the union was Davke in Pnimis Halev. We spoke about that, what we call that the union from Oimek. And Pnimis Halev, what does it shy to the Etzem and Neshama more. And therefore, the Etzem Pnimis Shebalev, or that reaches into the Tachlis HaKavana, as we'll see in a minute. The Amit is the Pnimis HaKavana of the Riyah de Chochma. And therefore, that causes in him a union from Shoiv and a union from Bittul Kol Matziusai, man to Kaim signed the Rotzen of the Melech, but not to be Miskaravelo. That's the union as we saw it yesterday. So I saw the Shaila, what you might call the simple Shaila asked it, so how is it that he gets it? Me'amoyach halalev. We say the Davke Kasher, it's Nimshach. Me'amoyach B'teich halev and Nirgash B'leiv, the Riyah de Chochma. Well, that brings him to the Mile of Kabbalah Seo and to the Inyan Shiflus and Bittul Rotzen HaMelech and the Inyan from carrying out the Rotzen in Dira B'Havteinim and Messias Kalim B'Zeh Ha'olam. Well, I asked the Shaila, how do you get from the Moyach into the Lev? What's the formula whereby it's nimshak miya moyach elalev, and he said that that's the difference between the Eved and the Sar in the Moshel, and that's the between the etzeminian of Riyah de Chochma, how it is in Moyach, or how that Riyah is nimshach into the Inyan Alev. Kasher it's in the Inyan from Moyach, then it causes Adar Rotze, causes Aliyah, and Advekis Milmata Lamayla, which is similar to a Rotze. Once it comes into Lev, then it's Ika Avedas Shoy. So the question, how do you get from the Moyach into the Lev?
How do you get the Chachma in the Moach?
Well, we'll see about that as we go along. I think that's been pretty clear. We've dealt with the whole Inyan of Chachma and the Inyan of Riyah in Chachma. We'll talk about that a little more, what are the conditions to reach Riyah de Chachma. But the shaila is, how do you get from the Moyach into the Lev to carry out this formula? So Enochanami, we'll see a little bit as we go along, that's dependent in our union of Hachona mitzad de Adam Atzmei in his Aveda, because we're now going to move into the question, how does it become Avedas Atzmei? The whole time we've been talking that the Ika Inyan of Shoiv is Davki B'Aveda B'Koyach Atzmei. So where do we see here the Inyan of Aveda B'Koyach Atzmei? So we'll see that in the Etzem Inyan from Riyah de Chochma, and I feel in the Gila of Riyah de Chochma, Eitzer Adam, that's maybe not the Aveda Atzmei. We say that the Avedas Atzmei is in two Oifanim. And that's one what you might call before the Inyan, and the other is Le'achrei HaInyan. In other words, in order for that to be Beklal Inyan should Riyah de Chochma, how much more so that the Riyah de Chochma should be nimshah to the Leiv, there has to be a lot of Yegiyas Atzmei on the part of the Adam to prepare himself and to purify himself and to be misrachik from the Inyan Elam Hazeh and to come to a beetle and a kli b'toich atzmei by way of having made himself shayat telakus b'choyach aveda mesuderes of on the one hand being misrachik from dvarim not ratzuyim and from being misbeinen and miskarev in his aveda to Inyoni Elikus through arousing a love of Hashem, a fear of Hashem, ira, and all those Inyonim. Precisely through that, it's shy for him to come to the Inyan of Riyah de Chochma. And we'll say that the more he's done that, then the more it's shy that the Riyah de Chochma will be nimshach b'toicha, because there's kilo a kli kibul in the lev. He's made himself a vessel and a kli that higher inyonim and higher giluyim can be nimshach b'toich his heart. And then the other inyan of Avedas Atzmei, we'll see that follows after the Riyah de Chochma is nimshach b'toich halev. Then there's still the Aveda of Torah u'mitzvahs, ba'asiyas kelim in Olam Hazeh, mamish, bringing out all of the inyanim into Poel mamish, b'toich Aveda b'Torah mitzvahs, and birur zichur ha'olam. But that's once again a inyan from Avedas b'Koyach Atzmei. So we got like a preparation to the Riyah de Chochma, and then afterwards we have another inyan which is Aveda b'Koyach Atzmei. But the etzem inyan of Riyah de Chochma is Oyer Elyon, which is Meir of the Mensch, as we're going to see in a second. So we could suggest that it depends what type of hachana you made as to whether the Riyah de Chochma will remain in the inyan of Moyach, or whether it will actually be nimshach el halev. And that's like the pitch climb at the Shara that we're asking right at this very moment. And that's what we see, that often it's brought down in Siddhas, that the inyan of Tmimas is connected with the inyan of the heart davke. So we say the inyan from Tmimei Leiv, and we go about there's Libi Tomim in Tehillim, Tier Libi Tomim B'chukecha. We see often the inyan from Pshitas and Tmimas is connected with the inyan halev. In other words, why is it that the oimek of the leiv is such a kli to the oimek of the inyan from Riyah de Chochma and even Lamayla Mizer? Or that's mitzad the tmimus of the leiv. a certain simplicity and bittul, and not asking shilas, but going with like we see by the always. We say every day in davening that the Eibishter says it, or we praise Avraham Avinu, the Eibishter found him. You found his heart faithful or trusty in front of you. That in the heart there's a certain simplicity and tmimus and readiness to go ahead, and that's what we call here Kabbalah Soil. And that's what connects up with the Inyan from Kabbalah Soil. Aber mir b'shas a mensch's aveda is in a oven from simplicity and tmimus, that he goes further and he's not choiche v'deirish, all sorts of shilas, of he throws himself into the aveda, and he doesn't weaken himself with all sorts of questions and chakiras al pi seichel. He goes with pshitas and tmimus, then he's a kli mitzad the leiv davke to be mamshich the av of a year, particularly the chokhmah, the riyah, the chokhmah, bring that down into the heart. And that's what we see, that there's two different types of tmimus also. There's a tmimus where a mensch is, we say that a mensch is a bit of a tomim. Sometimes you can use the expression, not in the most complimentary sense. I mean, he's like simple, he doesn't really know a great deal about what's being said to him, and he just goes ahead without paying attention to much around him, and that can have certain miles to it. But it's not the immediate inyan from tmimus. The emerson inyan from tmimus is dafki what a mensch has been involved in avodas Hashem, and he's been involved in understanding Elokus and bringing to Av of a Yira, to Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem. And nonetheless, he puts off all of those, what you might call higher echelons of understanding and a fulfillment for and he puts it all away, and he becomes a tomim. He becomes devoted in a simple and in a whole way. Therefore, the word tomim also means whole or wholesome. And that was the inyan of Tom Chay Tmimim. That was the whole inyan why the Rebbe called the yeshiva. After Tom Chay Tmimim was the whole idea was not that they should be simple people that just walked around and were simple and faithful people and didn't ask any shilas, but that they were people that the requirement was to be involved in avodas Hashem and in his bonanas Elokus and in his seiros avaveh, the year and all the things that were demanded of the Bochum Mitoncha Tmimim, and Leachri Mizeh, to realize that to come to the Oifen Aveda, that the Ikar was a form of pashtus and simplicity, and it's written in Ayin Beis that comes from the Tmimus of the Rotzen Ha'achmi, the simple Rotzen of the Nefesh Elokis to be Dovuk in Elokus, or that awakens, and we'll see that touches onto this whole inyan of Riyah, the Chochmah. And therefore, Davke, a person like that is a emes Baal Kabbalah Soil, because she's able to take on himself a yoke, knowing what he's doing in a what you might call a way that he gives himself away entirely to the yoke. And therefore he's bottled, but Davke, because he had a lot of inyanim prior to that, which lit up his soul both in the inyan of understanding and in the inyan for midas. But nonetheless, he puts all that off, and he devotes himself with a simplicity and a pashtus and a lack of what you might call hesitating because of chakiras, and that's called tmimus. And that was what was demanded of the people, the Hasidim, in the Bavish, that they be tmimim, but they to be davki tmimim li achrei ha'avoda and b'teich ha'avoda. And somebody holds by that, and that's davki a shleimas in the leiv. It's not in the moyach. That's davki a devotion, which after all the inyanim which the moyach can produce, there's a certain devotion of the odom to himself in an even which is mitzad the etzem, and that's as we saw the shores of that are davki in the leiv davki. The oimak leiv is davki magia to the oimak pshitas of the etzem nefesh, and therefore he's in an even from Kabbalah's oil, and that's what we suggested that every man that the inyan from Kabbalah Soil is be'ikar b'leiv, but that's the tmimas and the pshitas of the leiv. When it's ba'ikar koser, then no matter how high we go in the moyach, he doesn't stay in the moyach. He knows that ultimately the tachlis is to bring it into the leiv davka. And that's what we see, that there's a famous series of Maimonim from the Friedrich Rebbe in the year Toshin Aleph, where he's Mavaya over there, Barichas, that you have to have, a Chosid must have what is called the Inyan from Tzumas Halev, that you must bring your heart to notice what is going on. In other words, everything you achieve in Hasoga and understanding and appreciation, in Chokhmah Bina, and particularly in Das, you've got to have a certain tuning in of the heart. The heart has got to be able to draw itself to appreciate what does all that really mean in a simplicity and a Veda B'Tei Ha'olam. Therefore, we see that at the end of the Torah, right up near the end of Devarim, after Moshe Rabbeinu is given the whole Torah, and after he's even said the Shira Sa'azinu, he's given over the whole song and the whole Shleimus of the Torah, then he says to the Yidden, Yavi'ato Yisrael, Yesimu Levavchem, L'chol Asher, Dibati, or L'chol Asher, Diba Hashem, has to be the Yidden for Simu Levavchem. So the Frierdiker Rebbe must be that there has to be a deliberate act on the part of a Yid, that he's got to take his heart and make his heart literally a kli kibul to everything that he's been masik mitzad the moya and a filo mitzad the inyan from the more chitzenius aspect of the layer. He's got to all bring it down, but take pnimis halev, and then that leads to a form of tamiminus. So then he becomes completely involved and devoted to Elokus. So we can say that's what the Rebbe means here, that the inyanim of Riyad Chochmah have to be nirgash, believe, and that doesn't work stam, it doesn't just happen with a flip of the fingers, or that comes with lengthy working on himself. He prepares himself and makes hachonas rabbis that he should be even for tmimas and pashtas, but that opens up the leiv and the clay of the pnimis leiv, that then they're able to be makabel the whole of the moyach. That's like a long inyan of hachona to this inyan of the ultimate shoiv. Therefore, it's not so much that the etzem shoiv, it's always bekoyach atzmei. But if he hadn't had all that big preparation within himself, and particularly in the tmimas halev, then there wouldn't have been just nimshach, even if he'd reached the high understanding of Riyad Chochmah, which is not understanding anymore, it's really mamish, a form of Re'iyah, that wouldn't necessarily be nimshach ela leiv. Therefore we see that a certain elevated people, what is nisha, it remains in the moya, and he's even called a sar, he can even be called an elevated person, but it remains a inyan from oineg ha-moya bilvad. And then we saw that he brought down that the inyan from Riyad Chochmah is mitzad the inyan from beetle of a eved, when it's nimshach into the leiv, it causes the beetle of the eved davke, and he quoted the inyan from Moshe Avdi. Well, that's an amazing example of what we just said, because Moshe Rabbeinu was betachlis ha'ilu in all understanding, and in Chochmah there's never been anybody higher. Lo yaya l'mayla Moshe Rabbeinu, and yet nonetheless several psukim call Moshe Rabbeinu Moshe Avdi, that he had that unbelievable power to bring from the Riyad Chochmah in the highest possible form, to bring that down into the inyan of Avdis, but that's the inyan of Kabbalah Seo mitzad tmimus halei. In other words, that Moshe Rabbeinu was ayamasa Tomim, had he might call it, he was the tmimus haki nifla, that's efshel l'tayeh, that he was able to bring all of those inyanim into the inyan from Eved Davka. That's what we find that the Alter Rebbe brings in Lekutei Torah, in Parsha Bolach, when they get to Shabbos, it's told that every Yid on Shabbos goes from the inyan from Yankiv into the Madrega of Yisrael. In the weekdays we're in the level of Yankiv, and on the Shabbos Yidden arise to the level of Yisrael, and he brings over there that's two inyanim in Yira. There's Yira Tatoa and Yira Eloah. But Yira Tatoa is simple Yira, that's the K of the Shem Havaya, and Yira Eloah is the Yud of the Shem Havaya. I mean, the K meaning the K Tatoa, the lowest K. So everybody asks the Shala, how did you jump from the lowest point to the highest point? What about in the middle? You got a higher K, and then you got the Vav. What's with them? So the Alter Rebbe is mindful over there that in the simplicity of a Eved Poshut is really hidden the highest inyanim in the Yud of of the Shem Havaya, not the K, not the Vav, no, in the highest union of the Shem Havaya, or that's Yira Eloah, absolute bittul b'matzias mamish, or the simple union of an Eved, he's makabel from that level. And he has what jumps over all the other madregas, that he becomes a kli, and on the contrary, when that is nimshach in doing, that makes him even more of a Eved. So on Shabbos, a Yid also has to be an Eved, but he's an Eved in the way he's makabel from Pnimis ve'atzmiyas, ain't safe mamish, but that's the Yira Eloah. And that's the Taich Eved Neman. That we say in the prayers on Shabbos, we say Yismach Moshe. Yeah, B'matanas Chelch and Shachris in the Shemin Esrei. And then we say Ki Eved Neman Koros Oloi. Why should we be Mesamech in Moshe Rabbeinu's Madrege? Because he's a Eved Neman. So the Alter Rebbe tells us, what do you mean a Eved Neman, a faithful servant? That he's a Eved, but he's got the level of Yira Eloah, and the unit from the highest possible Inyonim from Riyah, and all those Inyonim mitzad Yira Eloah, and they're all nimshach into the Poshet Aveda of an Eved. And he said an Eved of that nature is called an Eved Ne'aman. He's got tremendously high madregas, and yet nonetheless he decided, and he's made himself into a Eved. As our Eved is called a Eved Ne'aman. And then it's written Yismach Moshe. So the Alter Rebbe says over there, that the Emerse Inim from Simcha comes after mitzad the bittul of Eved Ne'aman with all arichas. It's not the place to get involved in it over here, even though Purim Kotan is connected with the Inim from Simcha. Of Amasuda is Dika Simcha, not a Simcha from just drinking mashke v'kayetz v'zeh. No, I am a Indian of Simcha Saleh. So therefore he goes on to say now, the Rebbe, he said, however, we shouldn't touch it. B'chinas shoiv, zeh shemitzad b'chinas hariyah de chochma. I'm sorry, the b'chinas shoiv zeh, or this union of shoiv, which is mitzad the hariyah of chochma, hu mitzad gilui oyer elyoin shemeya olav. So now we need to understand what does he mean with that sentence. He says that the union of the shoiv that comes mitzad riyah de chochma is really mitzad that divine light has shined upon him, and that's brought him to the union from shoiv. So now why we say that the divine light shined upon him? I mean, he's done a heck of a lot of work if he got to riyah de chochma. And now he's brought down Yira the Chochma, B'toich Halev, and that's also a big achievement. And he's now in a state of Shoiv. And what does it mean that that's because our Oyer Elyon is Meya Olav? That's Kilu a formula that we're going to work on, because now he immediately goes on to say, but how did he get to that, etc. Is why would we say that it's Mitzad Oyer Elyon? So that is due to the fact that Chochmah, as we said, the Indian from Chochmah, as we pointed out on many occasions, is a Indian of Bittul Valiyah B'toich Ha'etzem. The Ilu Bina is a Indian from taking Ha'oras, Chochmah, and bringing them down into Hasoga and into details, how they unify with the Mensch. But the Indian from Chochmah is Be'etzem not the Mensch. And therefore Chochmah is called Koyach Ma, or that's the Indian of Ma Ubitl, despite the fact that it's a koyach. And therefore, when you reach the Pnimius, V'atzmius of Chochmah, it's not really you, but you are observing that which is completely higher than yourself. And you're like looking into a tremendous vision of a vista of something which is not you. On the contrary, that's Atzma saying, ain't say. And therefore, what is mayor on you in Chochmah is really the emes eikshu mitzad elakus, not what you take elakus. Now, how you are elevated in such a way that elakus takes you, and that's the difference between Chochmah and Bina in Chassidus. Chochmah is how you're taken by elakus, and Bina is how you take what elakus can give you. Or in Chochmah, you're bottled completely to elakus, and that's the inyan of Koyach Ma. You still remain in the spheres, but you become completely ois. And that's what he writes in Tanya in Perek Lamed Hey. In the Agor, the Alter Rebbe said the Chochmah is the inyan from Echad HaEmetz. And then he says, Hu levade ve'ein zu losei, zuhi madreges ha-chochma. He schreibt the Alter Rebbe dort. Hu levade ve'ein zu losei. There's nothing else apart from the Eibush. No Matthias, Klau. That's the madrega of chochma. A madrega means a madrega. Means that there's only something there. Hu levade ve'ein zu losei means that there's nothing there. So that's the Indian. The Chokhmah is how you are there, but you're not there. You're not there because the emes, that's what he said, Echad ho'emes. That the emes is mayor upon you. And you are given the unbelievable privilege that you can observe it. Well, that's a real Chokhmah. It's almost like you look in to this amazing vista that's really not you. And therefore, what happens in Pnimis HaChokhmah is that Emes Havaya Li'elam Hu Levade Ve'ein Zu Lotzei, he takes you. Or not that you take him. Bina is another chesed what they used to make. Bina is that you remain in your Matthias and none of us you take of it. That's another type of chesed. So that was the Rebbe. The Yid from Riyah the Chokhmah is really a from Oyer Elyon, which you've been given the principle of observing. The privilege. You've been given the privilege of observing it. And therefore, whatever happens to you, mitzad that oyer, is really the oyer is affecting you, because you're not really there. As we said, koach ma means you're not there. Atalo sham. If you're not really there, then the shoiv, which comes mitzad that, is literally something has been so massive and so tremendous that it's pushed you, as it were, into a state of bittul, and you're so botel that you say, oi, gewalt, I can only do what he wants me to do. I can only carry out his rotzen, lamata, like we saw in the form of a eved, that the inyan of the Pnimis HaChokhmah, that is in Yirei law, reaches down into the inyan of an eved. But, says the Rebbe, Achidish Tova, that's really not your doing. It comes to us that the etzem shoy, what you do mitzad the riyah the chokhmah, is not really your vayda. No, that's mitzad the gilei elyon. Ach zehu gam kein rak mashaho elyon poil liyah is bepchinas shoy. He said that's only what the elyon is poil to be the shoy. It actually makes you go down. But once you get down and say, oh, now I'm down in this world, I'm bottled, but whatever, I got to do, what am I supposed to do now? What am I doing down here? So the answer is Torah mitzvah. And the Torah mitzvahs are going to be perfect, and they're going to be soaked with all this inyan of this tremendous vision of Elokus that you've had. So therefore he said, once you're down there, and the oil has been poured on you, that in your shoiv, then etz aval, etzim kiyum ha-Torah mitzvah, nasa le'dizeh lamata, ha'le'zeh mikorach. It comes to us that after the shoiv, or after the movement of shoiv, within the nefesh or odom, then he's got to get cracking, and then he has to do himself. In other words, nobody's going to do that for you, not even Kaviyachol. The Eibush or the yin of breaking yourself into Torah mitzvahs, Kabbalah Seir, and to affect the world with Torah mitzvahs, that you got to do yourself. It comes to you, B'koyach ha'oira achmi shamei yolo. Shezo agoyrem b'pchinas habitul shaloi liyois lamata dafki. V'lashish kelim le if it weren't for the fact that tremendous oil had shined on you, and that unbelievable oil appeared on you, and that caused you to go down, then you wouldn't have the courage to be there, and you wouldn't have the courage to carry out the inyan. Siyas keilim lelakus, but Torah umitzvah. So come to us that that's responsible for your being there, but that doesn't do the work for you. The work is only done by you yourself. And that's what we see. We have to understand now the Mesiras Nefesh of a Yid of this nature. That here he's been in a infant Rotzai, and he's seen Elokus mitzad the bittul of Chokhmah and Riyah the Chokhmah, and he's got this tremendous gishmak in Elokus, and all of a sudden that itself says to him, oh no. You've got to, and like we said before, what's the crash? How do we know that he's going to get it down into his lave, Dafki, and going to become an Eved mitzad the lave? But that's a tremendous, having prepared himself. We'll see a little bit about that in a second. Aber, Yeah, nonetheless, it's a big Mesiras Nefesh and Kabbalah Sale on the part of a mensch, not just to be high and in Ruchnias, but to know that his Indian is to be a Eved, and Dafke to be Lamata, and Dafke to be busy with the world, to be Torud in all the Inyonim of Gila Elakus in the world, Mamish. And he said that the Indian from last is Kalim, Elakus. He said the Riyah, the Chochmah, in the form of Elyon is only a Gorem Lazer. If you hadn't had that unbelievable privilege of having observed Elakus in that way, you wouldn't come to that show. But once you come to it, then it's only a Goyrem, it's only what's brought you there. But the Etzim Arbet, as they say, the Arbet, the work that you have to do yourself. And what is it? Making Kalim Elakus. Aval Etzim or Asiyah. He said the actual doing of those Kalim, of being Lamata, B'teich Ha'olam, Vadai Hi B'koyach Atzmei. No doubt about it, says that you have to do yourself. Vadai is for sure. Everybody knows, put down in Sifrei HaKabbalah and also in Chassidus, that the word Vadai is a Rosh Tevis, Vayivorik David Es Hashem. Also, Vayivorech David Es Hashem means Vayivorech means to bring down. Lamshik Lamata, that he brought down the Inyan Elakus Lamata Mata. Anyway, Vadai hu b'koyach atzmei, a commotion is bu'al yiyo, the etzem b'chinas ha-shoiv b'kiyum ha-teiro mitzvahs, hu b'koyach atzmei davker. We said that the etzem in the shoiv. In other words, that the shoiv has got two things to it. The shoiv is the returning and realizing what you've got to do, and then there's the doing it b'poel. So the realizing what you got to do and that you got to be in a state of shoiv, that's numayla. That's mitzad the riyah de chachma. That's mitzad the elyon. But once you realize that, then you got to actually get cracking and actually do it. Or that is mitzad the koyach of the mensch himself. Or that's the koyach hatzmai. So we see there's like two tremendous stages. Omnom, says the Rebbe, mishum zeh, due to that, yefshar lachshoiv es hashoiv b'koyach hatzmai. He said, mitzad what we just explained, it's impossible to consider that the shoiv would be called b'koyach atzmei. Shaharei hakavona pnimis shebemitzvahs hu b'derech mamela al yedei gilui elyon. V'chein o asiyah, hi b'koychoi v'yasi osei. Avol he said, apnimius b'zeh hu al yedei oyer ho'eliki shemeya etzloi b'riyah de chachma. The Ika Shoiv or Kavana Pnimius Canal. So the Rebbe said, to put it more technically, what it means is that there are two things now in the Shoiv. There's the Etzem Asiyah, and the doing the Torah mitzvahs but the Kabbalah Soil in the world to make the world Kalim Lelakus. And then he said there's the prompting to that and the inspiration to that which came with Sadini from Riyah de Chachma. And the union would that caused you to come down. But what's the connection line? Once again, what connects them and what is the link? So all of a sudden I realize I got to be Lamata. That's how I'm Lamata. But how do I preserve that and how do I go ahead? On what basis? Do I all of a sudden say, well, here I am now Lamata. What's the union for? Ma yesh lasot kam. So that's what we explained earlier in the Maimah, that the Maila of Shoiv is that Shoiv is mitzad the Kavana Pnimius of the Eibishter. The innocent Kavana, what Hashem had in making the world was Dafki, the Inim from Diraloy is Barabatach to Inim, and that everything should be Nimshit Lamata, and the Dafki here, but take Zeho Elam, we should make the world Kalim to Elakus, as we mentioned earlier in the Maimah, the whole Inim from the Kavana Pnimius, and that's what brings about the Shoiv. So he said, when you switch from the Riyah de Chochma, from Rotzei into the Inim and Shoiv, in the Riyah de Chochma itself, but that's through the Tmimus Alev, like we said before, that also asks us the Shaila, how does that work? We've been through that at the beginning of this year. Now we get to the fact, you come down into the world, what inspires you, what holds you, is that Riyah de Chochma keeps telling you that the Kavana Pnimius is what you're doing. That gives you a tremendous ability to keep going and to be moisef all the time in the avodah, because there's like a tremendous kavanah pnimis is maya inside that asiyah, that you know you're doing what is the etzem purpose of Hashem in the whole creation, and you know that you're here to make kelim, and ultimately to make a dir is bora batach toinim, and the Melech Hamashiach was moisef, that now its Indian is to bring kelim ad kirikach to his scholars of Malchus Melech Hamashiach and Atzmas saying say mamish b'pel mamish b'toicha ha'olam. That's not ha'inem. Oid kavanah shir. Oid tosefes b'inyan ha'kavanah. That's what the Rebbe says now, that the inyan from the kavanah pnimiyas. He said, that's for derech mamela. You got that not from your own way. You got that because you saw Elikus, and Elikus spoke to you and it told you what's really going on. What is the ultimate kavanah? And that's the union of the pnimis v'atzmis ha'kavanah. That's but derech mamela. However, he said the union from the asiyah. That's b'koach atzmi. In other words, the two inyanim add up with what we said just a minute ago. And therefore he said, pnimis b'zeh. What is the inner neshama that's koching away inside your doing and inside your asiyah? Hu alidei ha'er alaki shemeir etzloi bariya de chachma ve'ika hashoiv hu ha'kavanah pnimis. And we said before, that's the kavanah pnimis of the Eibishter, that he wants Davke dirbe Atayim Davke to be toich ha'olam, and to be mamshich atzmus ein seif lamata b'toich ha'olam. That gives a mention tremendous boosting power, even though he's gone against the whole nature of the Ratzoi, and he's come down into a Inyan from Shoyiv. Now he's lamata, and he's had to call a couple of Seilnik, and he's a Eved. And so to a certain extent you might say, well, about that, I sort of lost all the glamour, I'm an Eved Pashut down here. What is the motivations, you might call it? What is the oir and the koch pnimi inside all of that, which gives him the boost that takes it always further, and Adar adds to it the whole time. Well, that's it, kavanah pnimis. Now that he knows, and he's actually almost seen, as you might say, he's seen the kavanah pnimis, and the kavanah pnimis is always talking to him, and then that pushes him further, and that motivates him and gives him the ability to carry everything out. Kumtais, that we got here several inyanim. We have that, first of all, he prepared himself in such a way that he was able to get into Riyah de Chachma. Then he had already prepared himself in such a way, and he works on himself in such a way that Riyah will come down into the lave. And once that happens, then he goes down in a form of shoiv. And he leaves behind all these big glamorous inyanim that he had, and that's not stam glamour, very, very high inyanim in Elikus. And then the Elyon Shabazeh, that's Maya in him, and gives him the koyach to be in the world and carry out the kavanah pnimis, and that's like the pnimis, or the neshama of his avodah, and that's what keeps him going, even though he's a eved, and he's become a eved. That's what we would call, like we saw before, in the name of the Alter Rebbe, in the Likutei Torah, that's an eved ne'eman. Therefore he's called a trustworthy servant, because we can rely on him. We know he's always going to turn the right way, and as you might say, he's going to make the right decisions of Keyetzavitz. Omnam, said the Rebbe, Gam klolos ha'inyan liyesh gilui elyon k'moi b'chinas riyah de chokma hanal liyesh alidei zeh hashoiv kanal b'dei lavoi lazeh harizeh alidei yagiyah v'aveda b'yizdachachus nafshoy ba'asoga v'yizbonenes v'yavaveh. Yeah, like we said before, we made the point that how does he get to this whole different at the beginning? How does he get to McLeod to his high level when Riyad Hoffman? He got up to such a point that so we pointed out that that's also through a way to B'koyach Hatzmi. In other words, there's a way to B'koyach Hatzmi before, then there's a way to B'koyach Hatzmi at the end. In the middle, the Eibishter, as it were, takes him and gives this unbelievable Gila, which shows him where to take everything in the right direction. But he said you would never have been able to get anywhere near Riyah de Chokma if you hadn't made a tremendous effort. And we saw that Yigiyah Vaveda V'Yizdachakus Nafshay, the purification of his nefesh, Basoga V'Yizbonenes V'Yavava with the union of understanding and being misbeinen in what you understood and having love and fear of the Eibishter. Ki tzrichim liskleis lebechinas riyah de chok. You don't get riyah de chokmas down. You have to have a worthiness and a schus. You have to be zeicher lebechinas riyah de chokma. V'hainu alidei aveda v'yigiyah tchila. Right from the very beginning, basoga of his bonenes, v'yizdachakis nafshoi bi'ava v'yira. Oz harihu zeicher lebechinas riyah de chokma. Sure. And remember, it's Hadikot. Like they say, avoid at the beginning and avoid at the end, and in the middle, a big and tremendous siyata dishmaya of only holiday schus. Only that you had a schus to that, and that was through the preparation that you made, and particularly, as we said, in the Veda for Tmimus, but that's also a preparation for the Gili Daf Kibbeh. Alright, so that'll be enough for this evening.
How do you do everything with Tmimus when you study how complicated and how it gets? And
that's what we pointed out. That's you have to learn in Talmud. That's what the Rebbe Rashab said. The Rebbe Rashab said you have to be a Tomim after you know it. And that's a much higher form of Tomim. And that's a Tmimus becomes inside the Etzem HaNefesh. There can be a Teva, there can be a Tmim which is called Teva HaOdom. That's the way he's a Tomim, a push to man. It doesn't involve in too many inyanim, he just does things simply. That's not what Tomim Tmim is about. Tomim Tmim brings you to all the details and yet tells you that you've got to become nonetheless a Tomim. And that means by putting yourself in to the inyan of Tmimus through Aveda Dak. And that's what we described before.
Rabbi, but Chassidus always talks about, hisbonenus and this and that, and it doesn't really tell you what to meditate on other than, God is big.
Oh, yes, it does. You shouldn't say that. Chassidus tells you a lot about hisbonenus. Maybe not in this particular text. Well, there's a lot about hisbonenus in Chassidus. So we can talk about that in private. I can tell you where you want to look up about hisbonenus a lot. So maybe if you want, we can talk about the union with hisbonenus a bit in the cloud. What does it mean hisbonenus and so on. But there's a big cloud that I once heard from one of the great mashpiyim. That he said if people ask too many shilas about what is hisbonenus, how is hisbonenus, what do you do, how do you do it, what is it, that's a sign that they're not really looking to do anything. They're just trying to make it out that you can't really know what it is, so there's nothing what to do. But once you start off trying to think about things and try to reflect on things, try to take them into your mind, then you can be guided a bit about the details of what some more specific details in hisbonenus. Of hisbonenus you've got to take seriously, think about it, and try to put it into your mind and think about it even when you're not learning it. And that already leads you into hisbonenus. But in the time we'll talk about it a bit more. So listen, I want to have a meeting now with everybody. I don't know if these guys are probably buzzed off. I wouldn't put it past them if they've already gone back to the dorms. So if they're around, then we'll have a talk. All right? Just a very brief.
In which room do you want to have a talk?
No.